This is JILLIANA Ranicar-Breese, and this is part 2 of my interview with Nigel Shamash. Nigel, tell me about the road less travelled you took
Well,
in the early 70s.
I came back from California and I met a guru in London. He was called Swami Gita Nanda, and he had miraculous powers. He could stop his heart from beating. He could change the rate of beating of the heart. He was kind of psychic and telepathic, and he was incredibly charismatic. And I went off to live with him for 3 months and to study yoga with him. He was
On a one-to-one basis?
No, there's about 30 of us.
Okay.
But he was a bit of an enigma because he would teach all this peace and love, and he was a wonderful teacher, and yet he'd lose his temper and he'd have fits of ego, and it was confusing, and I wasn't happy there. But I was in a place where I thought, I have to stick with this. I have to.
Were you in a kind of an ashram?
It was an ashram,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of discipline, and if you're a minute late for one of his sessions, you were in trouble. It was quite a military discipline, and I was very unhappy with this discipline. But I thought, I have to suffer if I want to be enlightened, because somehow I thought if I work hard, I will find enlightenment and peace of mind. And that was a kind of model of how I'd been brought up. You work hard, and you get something at the end of it. And I even remember when I was going to get initiated in meditation, before I went to India, that saying to the guy initiating me, how long will it take to get enlightened? And he actually said something, about maybe 6 years, I can't be specific. And now, in hindsight, you think, what a lot of rubbish, but that was the mindset of many people at the time, that you do something and you get something back. But anyway, I spent 3 months with this guru, and I was delighted when I left, and I went to New Zealand and I taught yoga. And I went
What kind of yoga? Was it hatha yoga?
I did hatha yoga, but I did a lot of breathing techniques, because I learned a lot about breathing and about chanting with Swami Gita Nanda. So it was a good mixture. And in those days, not a lot of people were teaching much more than just hatha yoga, the physical aspects. So I did feel I had something to offer. And then I kind of drifted. I was young. I went to Australia for a couple of years and studied things like acupuncture and massage. I eventually came back, and actually
Back to England?
Back to the UK.
What, London?
Yeah, to London. And I worked in a health farm. I wanted to be an opera singer, and I was already 27 or something. It's a bit late in the day to start a training. I didn't even have a musical background. And I remember just feeling very miserable, ungrounded,
Confused.
almost suicidal. And I went through quite a dark period.
Okay.
And eventually, it was my family who'd been sort of supporting me, giving me the odd handout to help me on my journey. Even though I was doing bits of work, they eventually pulled the rug under my feet and said, hey, time you settled down and got a job.
Got married.
Or got a job, at least. And
they didn't call that a job.
No, it wasn't a proper job. And I came back to the UK, I was studying opera, and then I was teaching a bit of yoga, and just for them I was kind of
fooling around
away my life, because I'd had a good education in their minds. And eventually I managed to get a job with Portsmouth Polytechnic. I was a senior lecturer in marketing, and from being on the dole virtually, I got suddenly paid a huge amount of money for doing very little work.
And the family was happy.
Oh yeah,
they wanted to get you a wife, no doubt.
Well, that comes later. But it was I'd hit the jackpot. I had to obviously make up a bit of a CV to fill in all the years that I hadn't been working, but I seemed to get away with it, which is really what marketing's about. So I marketed myself, and I was a senior lecturer in marketing for 4 years. And during this time I got involved...
where was that?
In Portsmouth.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And during that time I got involved with a guru called Sai Baba.
Oh, yes,
And
famous.
I went several times to see him. I had an interview with him. I was very inspired by him. I started a Sai Baba devotional group. And I got frustrated after a year or two because I didn't have much personal contact with him after the first interview. And I decided to go to Sri Lanka to stay with another guru called Swami Premananda. And he also had miraculous powers. And I gave up my job, much to my mother's chagrin. She was very upset. She thought I'd finally settled down with a nice job. And so I went off to Sri Lanka, thinking again, I'm going to get enlightened, that this man is going to press the magic button and something's going to happen. And of course, it didn't happen like that. I stayed 4 months doing kind of religious practices, but doing a lot of hanging around, really. And it turns out that although he was so charismatic and wonderful, he was also fooling around with this woman, and he's...
Was he meant to be celibate?
That's the thing. He was meant to be celibate. That was why it's not good. And I left around that time. I was disillusioned. And it was just the time the riots were starting in Sri Lanka in 1983. It was a fitting time to get out. And I went to India. And I think that's where I had a bit of a breakthrough, because I spent 10 months wandering around India. And I think it gave me the courage to depend on myself.
Is that when you discovered Pondicherry?
No, Pondicherry was way before, at the beginning of my journey.
Okay.
This time I went round India and had many experiences, but I'd given up the idea of gurus. And I think it was a step forward because I was having to rely on myself, you might say.
Did you want to become a guru?
No, never, no.
Or a mentor?
Not consciously. It was it never occurred to me that I would be a guru. No, I just wanted to be happy because I wasn't very happy. That's why I'm wandering around. I wasn't peaceful in my mind.
The lost Jew.
Yeah,
the wandering Jew.
Yeah.
The wandering Jew.
I came back to the UK from India, feeling I really wanted to set up some sort of a community to bring people together.
Right.
And had some very...
You had a vision?
Yeah, I did have a vision. I remember doing a workshop. It was called Rebirthing, where you get in touch with what you want to do. And affirmations and Louise Hay's work were all part of this workshop. And I got in touch with the idea that I really want to set up an alternative healing centre. And I knew it had to be somewhere warm, because I'd been in Ireland, I liked it, but it was too cold. I spoke Spanish, and Spain...
So you thought Spain?
Spain was relatively cheap, and I thought, right, it's got to be somewhere in Spain. And I really created this vision. I chanted it, I visualised it, and started to really believe that I was finding it. I was on a mission. And I spent some months wandering around in Spain, and eventually you get little clues and you start to feel, yeah, I'm getting closer. And I arrived in Orgiva in 1985, early winter, and I walked into the bar and...
Which one, Baraka?
Mirasol, it's the one near the garage. And I said, has anybody got a place to sell? And there's all sorts of people wanting to sell me things, they're all rubbish. But there was this guy who was from Luxembourg called Carlos, and he said, I've got a place, but I don't really want to sell it to you. And nobody wants to buy my place anyway. I don't even want to sell it. And he was going on like this. It was very intriguing. So I said, well, I'd like to see it. Well, he said, but I'm just going to see another place. He said, well, if you're not back in 20 minutes, I'm going. I'm not waiting. So I just managed to get back in time.
Yeah.
And I followed him out of Orgiva. It was very inauspicious. The road wasn't tarmacked. I walked by the dump, and I came to the big door out by the Green Man, walked through the gate, and wow, hey presto, I saw it. It was like having an acid trip. Time stopped, I found it. That was amazing.
Oh, but we're going to continue in part 3. That's wonderful.